From Salt Lake City, Utah, this is Heart of the Matter Long, where we are trying to talk about the faith in this age of fulfillment. And tonight is an excellent program in the waiting because I have a longtime dear friend, sister in the faith, warrior. She's a warrior. I referred to her as being, as having the attributes of a bulldog. She is tough. And so we're going to be talking back and forth, learning all about our guest, and then we will unfold what she has been doing, what she's learned, and how that all plays out. Sarah Leanne Young, thank you for joining me on this auspicious occasion.
Thank you for having me.
Sarah is, how long have we known each other, Sarah?
I tried to figure that out myself, and I actually don't remember what year it was that we officially met, but Joe and I have been following you on YouTube since you were doing Heart of the Matter 1.
TV.
Yeah, at TV 20.
Oh.
But I think it was like 2000, maybe 10 that we started coming
Joe
on.
is her husband. We'll learn all about that. I've done some, she's a writer. I knew her as a writer before I knew anything else about you, really. She's a very good writer. She's written some fiction works and is working on those. And then she's also edited some stuff of mine with great attention and detail. But let's go back, as we often do. First, we'll have a prayer, and let's go back and learn all about Sarah Leanne before she was young.
Yes.
Go back to the pre-existence.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want me to pray or you want to do it?
You can do it.
You can be the Pope.
No, thank you.
Okay. I'm the Pope. Lord, thank you for this time, the ability to sit here. Thank you for Wendy and Seth and this property to do these things in. Grateful for your provision. Pray for Sarah that you'll open up her mind and heart and mouth to be able to articulate the things you want her to say as we discuss her ministry, her walk, her assessment, her insights into the faith. And we just pray you'll bless our time together in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Sarah Leanne Young, go way back. You can start with Grandma and Grandpa if you like. Let's hear about the beginnings.
Well, I don't really know much about my grandparents, so we'll just start with when I was born.
Okay.
I was born in Spokane, Washington, and my parents, both Christians, pretty quickly after I was born, they moved to Yakima, Washington. And they started going to Westside Baptist Church. And I have to start with this story because I was a newborn baby when it happened. Oh. My very first church experience. They were going to Westside Baptist, and my mom was holding me in her arms during the sermon. And they both looked down, and my face was purple. And so they rushed out of the service. Took me to the hospital. And the doctors were like, yeah, the mechanism that keeps your food in your stomach is not developed with her. So when you lay her flat, the food comes up and she chokes. So they had to lay me on an incline for like the first few weeks of my life so that I wouldn't suffocate. But I don't care what that doctor says, Shawn. It's because I didn't like that church, okay?
You'll discover why that is so humorous in the subsequent minutes.
I'm telling you, that's what it was.
Wow. What a great story.
So, yeah, my dad used to love telling me that story. But anyway, so when I was like between 4 and 5 years old, they got divorced. And my mom moved my sisters and I've got an older sister and a younger sister, so I'm the middle child, which makes me the weirdo. And so she moved us to Spokane. My dad stayed in Yakima. And we started going to a Christian daycare. My mom would put us in this Christian daycare. It was kind of attached to a church in Colbert, Washington, while she was at work. But that's where I made my prayer that, the Christians talk about is their confession of faith, making the prayer of welcoming Jesus into their life and their heart. And I was 5 years old.
Wow.
So
how did that come about? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because the woman that walked me through the prayer and prayed with me, I don't remember her being there any other day except for this one day she was there. And she, asked me if I knew who Jesus was and if I wanted to welcome him into my heart. And we did the prayer. I said yes. And it's interesting because when you're 5, you don't really think about these things. You don't really comprehend what you're doing completely. But that's when I made the prayer. And for some reason, it's very clear in my memory. It's a very special time for me. But pretty quickly after that, I realized that there is a huge difference between Jesus and what he wants and what he wants for your life and how you should act and all this. And then the people who call themselves followers of Jesus and how they act and treat you. And you just kind of think, shouldn't we be doing what Jesus says? Or I'm confused. But the same daycare, my little sister, who was 2 or 3 years old at the time, this girl took her by the hair and dragged her all over the playground and ripped a big chunk of hair out of her head. And so my mom goes to the ladies that are running this Christian daycare center, and they say, what happened? Why did you let this happen? And they said, well, you need to teach her to defend herself. And I was like, what? What? My 3-year-old little sister needs to know how to be physically violent with people? And so it was like something in my brain at that moment thought, okay, just because this is a Christian place doesn't mean we're safe here. And so that, things started very early in my brain, like, well, that's weird. That's weird. Just things didn't quite line up in my brain.
What a great lesson. That probably protected you.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. From that point on, I was just like on the lookout at daycare. Big sister, she's crazy.
Yeah.
So we went there for a while until we were old enough to start going to school. And my mom eventually moved. We were living in Colbert, Washington, which is just outside Spokane. So then we moved back into Spokane, where she got a different job. And we started going to a church there. I don't remember the name of the church, but we were very active there. We did everything. We went to the services. We went to the youth group. We made sandwiches for the homeless. We did Bible studies. We did everything there. But my dad, on the other hand, we would visit him every other weekend in Yakima. And because of the divorce, he was pretty much shunned from the church that they were going to. So he had to stop going there because I don't know if they officially excommunicated him, but they pretty much did.
Do you remember the denomination?
Baptist.
Baptist. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still there, that church is, but they don't call themselves Westside Baptist anymore. They just call themselves West Side.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Westboro.
No, West Side. West Side.
Just kidding.
Yeah, so he couldn't go there anymore.
What did you think of that?
I didn't know at the time that this was going on. He tried to continue going. He kept taking us there right after the divorce, and then we just stopped going. But he didn't really explain any of that. I didn't learn any of this until I became an adult. But he stopped going and was very depressed. So he would try and look for a new church. It took him a long time, and that his approach was much different than the way my mom approached church. She would just find a church, and if it lined up with what she believed and she had some kind of emotional connection with the pastor, then she liked it and she would continue going there, and that's it. She'd be committed. But my dad, on the other hand, would go to a church and be very objective and observe things very carefully. And so he would literally take us to churches, and he was really teaching me how to check churches.
Wow.
And I never thought about it until I started doing the Check My Church thing. So he was taking us to churches every week, and we would drive down the road, and I would see all these different churches. I'd say, well, what does that church believe? And then he would say, oh, that's the Mormons. They don't have a cross because, and he would just go through and tell me all the stuff he knows about all these different churches.
Fascinating.
And so he would tell me all these things. And when we would go to a church service, he would listen to the sermons, and we would do the service and everything. We'd get in the car and leave, and he would always ask me, what did you think? And I would say, I don't know. I don't think anything. I'm 8 years old. Yeah. So he would then tell me, well, I didn't really like it because the pastor said this, and that's not in the Bible anywhere. And so he would do this with us every time. And he would sometimes like it, sometimes not like it, but he would point out all the things. And when I was a kid, I kind of thought, why are you being so nitpicky and difficult. Why don't you just pick a church and go there? Like, why does this matter? But then, eventually I figured that one out for myself. Yeah. But we did that for a long time. And my mom got remarried when I was 13. And my dad got remarried when I was 10. So he really ramped up the church. He was really motivated to try and find a good church when he got remarried, because he wanted us to go as a family, and it was like family time for him. So we just kept doing that, and he really struggled to find a good one until he finally found one that he thought was good, because it was very important. Teach the Bible. The Bible, that's all he cares about. Teach the Bible. So we would go, and he found one that he thought was very good Bible teaching church. They started going for a while, and after a while I was like, well, how's your church going? He said, well, not very good, because I started going to their Bible study, and I found out that all the Bible study is they're just talking about the sermon from that week. And he said, I don't understand. Why can't we study more Bible? It was just like an addiction for him. I just want more Bible. Why do I got to talk about the sermon? Let's talk about something different. And so he confronted the pastor, I think, and can we do this? It's not like he was a jerk or anything. He would just suggest things, and they were very offended, very threatened, insecure. They thought, does this guy want my job? He wants to take over this church. And he's like, no, I just want a good Bible study. That's it. I mean, why couldn't they just let him start his own Bible study in the church and say, okay, well, go ahead.
Sure.
But no. So he stopped going there. And after a while, I think he'd probably tried every Christian church in Yakima Valley that he could find that lined up with what he believes doctrinally. So he doesn't really do the church thing.
Wow.
And my
From
mom,
that point on till today?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, every now and then he would try another one, but it's just, he knows so much, It's when you know so much about the Bible, it's really hard to go to church.
Yeah, it is.
Very hard. So.
Wait, I want to interrupt. I am learning these things now.
Yeah, Shawn doesn't know anything.
I don't know anything. I just know a few things about her being a good writer and her children and her husband's name. But I don't know any of this. Just because I have to say that, because there could be some idea that I knew this and went and grabbed you and pulled you into my clutches.
No, Shawn knows nothing of my childhood. This is all news. So
keep going. So, by the way, how did you handle the remarriages of mom and dad?
I was fine with it. I really love both of my step-parents, so everything was, And
are they still your step-parents?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
My stepmom is an ex-Mormon.
Oh, wow.
She was raised in Catholic school, and then she converted to Mormonism, I think as like a 17 or 18-year-old. And she married a Mormon in the temple, and then she got divorced.
Ooh.
Because of what she experienced in the temple. Wow. It was just too much for her. That freaked her out. So
you have a lot of religiously astute people kind of in your life.
Yes. Yeah.
They're kind of not just pushed over by anything.
Right.
Except maybe mom.
Yeah, well, and my stepmom, she met my dad online, and he started teaching her about the Bible, and everything was like new to her. She's raised in Catholic school, was a Mormon, and so he's like, no. This is what the Bible says. Wow. So she was really learning everything, and she came down. She was actually born in Malta, raised in the island of Malta.
Wow.
And, yeah, I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
And
whoever talks about Malta?
Nobody.
Nobody.
We should. Anyway, but she moved down to Canada, and then she moved to Yakima, married my dad.
Wow.
And yeah. And then my mom, when she got remarried when I was 13, my stepdad lived in Coeur d'Alene, and we lived in Spokane. So they had to decide where we would live. But she didn't really care for Spokane that much, I don't think. And so she said, we'll move to Coeur d'Alene. So we stopped going to that church, which I didn't really care for anyway. Like, I really hated socially interacting with anybody. My favorite part was just making sandwiches for homeless people. I hated the youth group because I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Why is that?
Well, it was almost like forced friendship.
Oh.
It was like, let's all smile at each other and pretend that we want to be friends. I don't know. It just seemed so fake and forced. I did not enjoy it.
And how old were you then?
At this first church, well,
When you're making sandwiches, 13?
Between age 7 to 13.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I didn't really care for it. The only thing I really liked about it was when I got to actually learn something. When I was learning about Jesus, like that made me excited. But beside that, I just didn't care about any of it. And the pastor was always yelling. I mean, he was bald, okay? He was bald, and his face would turn beet red when he's like screaming at the congregation. And
So it was a great experience for you.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful. Pounding on the podium, and my mom would be in tears. And I'm just like, why do we do this every week? He's just yelling at you.
So you're quite critical and observant, cerebral, even as a young age. This is your dad's side coming through in you.
Yeah, he was very objective and critical, and so I always had that in me. But you don't realize a lot of things as a child. You're just kind of taking everything in. But when they my mom got remarried, 13, so we moved to Coeur d'Alene and we had to find a new church. And that's when we started going to Real Life Ministries, which is the hugest megachurch in Idaho, probably in the Pacific Northwest. They have like 10,000 members or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very popular. Everybody goes there. They've got like this building the size of a Walmart. It's like the hugest church building I've ever seen. But anyway, so we started going there, and it was when they were just starting out, and the pastor was actually preaching at a local high school in the gym there. And so my mom, I guess, my older sister has always been very active and devout to all of her church service and everything. She was really into studying the Bible, and she really took initiative when we were kids to do all of this research and to find the church and to take me along with her. I was really just like this person going along with everybody, but she was really, she kind of took a leadership role, and she would take me to Bible study with her. And she found Real Life Ministries, so we started going there. And we did the same thing. We went to church on Sunday, we did the youth group, we would do summer camp, winter camp, everything that they had to offer, we would do it. And we loved it there, we loved it. We loved everything about it. And we thought that it was just this awesome place, and but then we started noticing things.
The two of you and mom and her, or you especially?
I noticed things independently, and I didn't discuss them with my sisters or anything. I just kind of thought them to myself. But my older sister would notice things too, and then she would say things. She'd make little comments, but we never really talked to each other about what we were thinking. We just said things, and it made the other person think. But it all kind of came to a head when we invited my dad to church.
Oh.
But before I get to that, I have to tell you the things that we noticed, because they were really, I mean, when you hear about the abuse that some people experience in like the LDS church and other like severely abusive churches, you just think, well, what I went through was nothing. But it's just these little tiny red flags, that kind of go up in your head and make you think, maybe this isn't quite right, something's not right here. So one of the things was we went to this Bible study group, and the Bible study leader, she was our same age. She was in high school with us, went to our high school. And I always kind of thought that was weird. Like, why don't they have an adult teaching us, like, that knows the Bible? But anyway, I'm so critical, Shawn. I'm a mean person.
Are you?
I don't know.
I don't find you as mean, but I do find you as very direct and not putting up with BS.
I think I get that from my dad, because he's just the same way.
But I don't think mean. I don't think
good.
you call people names. I don't think you make fun. You just want direct truth.
Yeah. Just tell me the answer.
Right.
Anyway.
Tell me the damn answer.
Just give me the truth.
Yeah, not even damn truth. You're so nice.
I don't like to swear either.
I know.
But I'll tell you what, I was swearing in my head this weekend, but we can talk about that later.
Okay. That's our cliffhanger.
Yeah, just wait. Anyway, so Bible study, this girl, okay, so they put us through Bible study and they give us these workbooks. It's like homework. They give you a workbook, you have to go home, you study the Bible by yourself, you answer the questions in the Bible study workbook, and then you come back and you just give your answers. And there might be a discussion that follows from that, but in my mind as a rebel, it's homework. I don't want to do homework. So I didn't do it ever. I had the workbook. My sister's studiously in her room answering all the questions. She's doing it. I literally see her doing it. And in my head, I'm thinking I should probably be doing that, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna go watch TV instead. So I was very lazy. But she always did the work.
Maybe you were smart.
I don't know. She's smart, you know?
Maybe, no, but just in that decision. Sister, you're cleaning the house, but the wiser thing might be to like hang out with the Lord, sort of thing. I don't know. It just sounds like you were making better decisions.
Have different brains. I feel like she's very conscientious and responsible. She's always been very responsible, and whatever the rules are, I'm going to follow the rules perfectly to the T. I'm going to get it done. And with me, I'm just like, I don't really care about rules. Who made the rules? Why does he get to make the rules? You know, I'm just very critical, I guess. But she would do it every week. Every week I would put it off or not do it. And then we'd go to the Bible study and everyone does their answers and I'm like writing the answers down as the Bible study's going.
John the Baptist.
Yeah. I was like, okay. And it's like they probably noticed me writing the answers down, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I'm just doing it. But one week this poor girl comes in and she hadn't been doing the Bible studies either, but she felt serious guilt and shame about it. And so she just broke down in tears one time and she was crying and she's like, I just haven't been doing it. I don't even remember what her reason was. I just remember thinking she feels bad about not doing the Bible study. Like I don't do it and I don't care. So then I felt bad because I thought, wow, what a sweet girl. She really cares about this and I couldn't give her a rip. But then the Bible study leader was annoyed by it. And she just kind of like did this with her fingers and was just like stressed out that this girl was crying to her that she couldn't do the Bible study. And so I was kind of thinking, well, I mean, that's a weird reaction to somebody who's struggling spiritually and wants guidance, you know? And so I remember after that, my older sister saying, I don't understand why she was annoyed with her for opening up like that. And so then I thought, yeah, that's weird. So we didn't really ever have a discussion about it, but I was just like, that's weird. And so it's just like little things like that every now and then where I'm just like, this is weird. I don't like this. But then we kept going because we loved the pastors and they always were such good speakers is the thing. We didn't think critically about what they were saying as much as how it made us feel and how good of a speaker they were. Like it's easy to just agree with someone who's a really great speaker. It's like, oh yeah, charismatic people, they're really attractive in that way.
Did the worship come into effect yet? That usually does start to take effect with teenagers?
Yes, as a teenager in youth group, the worship was just like my jam.
My jam.
It was my jam. We would go there and it would be the best. It was like raves for kids who don't do drugs.
This is so funny.
Because that euphoria that you get from the emotional experience they want you to have. They create that music specifically so that you have this emotional experience.
And the unity with everyone else having it.
Everybody else with their hands in the air and
like they just don't care.
They just don't care. They're singing. Yeah, it was a great time. And I never even thought about it, you know? I got baptized in that church when I was 16, maybe 17 years old. And my boyfriend at the time was an atheist. And I invited him to come to the baptism because I thought if he sees my awesome church and all this and he has the experience, then he'll want to be a Christian too.
Sure.
And so I invited him and eventually he said that he was a Christian, but I wasn't buying it, Shawn. Okay, not buying it. We don't have
He
to
was,
talk about why.
Sarah is my girlfriend, Christian.
Yes. I'll be a Christian until we break up.
Yeah, there you go.
But anyway, so another kind of red flag for me was when we went to this, I think it was a winter camp, and we were in one of these little small group discussions. And again, the small group leader is the same age as me, and she's leading this discussion. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but they asked a question, and I think it was about like witnessing to your friends that aren't Christians or something like that. And how do you witness to people at school or whatever for Jesus Christ? And so I started talking about my boyfriend, and I was like, yeah, so with my boyfriend, and she interrupted me. She said, why are you dating a non-Christian? And it was just like that. Why are you dating a non-Christian? Like, she's like really concerned. And
So concerned.
and I was so shocked by that. I was like, wait a second, I can have friends that aren't Christian, but I can't have a boyfriend who's not a Christian? And I didn't really understand that. And so I didn't know what to say. I was just like, because I like him? He's a nice guy? I don't know. And so I was really like humiliated, kind of. You know, she called me out and criticized me in the middle of this small group. And so I didn't say anything for the rest of the small group session, and she could tell that I was just like demoralized by it. And so as soon as it was over, I leave this building that we were in to go back to my room, and she chases me down and she says, I wasn't trying to be mean or anything, I just was concerned for you. And I'm like, okay, couldn't you tell me one-on-one that you're concerned for me? Like, why do you have to do that in front of everybody? And so that was just weird to me. And it's just like all these little things kind of add up. But the big thing was when my dad came. So we invited him. He came to visit us. I don't remember why he was visiting us, but he came into town and we're like, come to church with us. And as soon as he pulled into the parking lot, Shawn, as soon as he pulled into the parking lot, he was just like, are you guys serious right now?
What, the valet parker wanted to give him a ticket?
Waving us in with flags and come this way.
The importance of church.
So he parks the car, he gets out. And in my mind, I'm thinking, he is going to be so impressed. This is going to impress him so much. And he's going to love it. And as soon as he sees the building, he's just like, wow. And I said, yeah, it's a really big building. And he's like, I don't care. And so we get inside and the worship service starts, and we, I think somebody offered him coffee, and he was just like, no, I don't want any coffee. Let's get with it, okay? Let's get to the sermon. And so he tells the sermon, and I don't remember what the sermon was about or anything like that, but the whole time my dad's just kind of grumbling under his breath and just crossing his arms and shaking his head, and he's just not having it. And then I know, because I know him, I'm just like, oh no, he's hearing bad things right now. I don't know what he's hearing, because I didn't hear at the time what he was hearing.
Sure.
Everything I'm hearing, I'm just like, what? I don't understand. What's the problem? Everything sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And so the service ends and we're walking out. And that time, I don't know if the pastor there still does this, but he always shakes everybody's hand that comes in and out of the door. And so my dad shakes his hand, and I don't remember if they had a discussion or not. I think he asked him one question, and then he answered it. And my dad's like, okay. And he just left the building, and we get in the car, and I was like, well, and he's like, well, I'm not impressed at all. And that was not a biblical sermon at all. And he told me all these things. I don't remember it. I don't remember the specifics, but I was just like, my heart sank because I put so much time invested in this church, and I thought it was like the best thing ever. And he's telling me all these things, and I'm just like, oh no. And then my older sister, who was much more serious about church than I was, she started doing her own research. You know, she listened to what he said, and then she would go back and re-listen to sermons and like do notes and study and stuff. And then she would come to me and say, he's right. I mean, it's not biblical. They're just taking stuff out of context and inserting it into this message that they want to tell, but it has nothing to do with what that verse is actually teaching in the Bible. And they still do it today. So it was just so disappointing, and I was just like, I felt like I'd been lied to. And so she found a different church. We all stopped going. I don't remember if my mom and my younger sister stopped going quite yet, but
About how old did you depart?
like 18.
And you were baptized in that church?
I was baptized there.
By the pastor?
No, by the youth pastor. And that youth pastor stepped down, very shocking everybody. Like one day he just announced, I'm stepping down. Nobody knew why. I tried to ask him, he wouldn't tell me. And I always thought that was another little red flag.
Atheist, porn, gay.
And you know, I have tracked down people that used to go to that church, who used to be leaders in that church when I was going there, and they are not there anymore, and they are in the news for violent battery and drinking in public and all this stuff. And I'm just like, that is so sad. It's so sad. But anyway, so we stopped going. We kind of, not suddenly, it just kind of happened. As soon as he did that and I started like paying closer attention, I was just like, oh no, he's right. Because, you know, I wanted to argue. I wanted to justify it and excuse it and say, no, he could be wrong.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. So we stopped going, and my sister found a different church that taught the Bible verse by verse, expository teaching. And then after a while, they noticed we weren't going anymore. So the youth pastor called my older sister and said, hey, where you been? You haven't been around. And she said, I found a church that teaches the Bible.
Wow.
And he was like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. She told me that, and I remember she was just so like annoyed that he said that. And I was like, well, yeah. But anyway, so she started going to a different Calvary Chapel down there, and I just stopped going altogether because I was done with it. After that happened, I feel like I was, I guess, jaded, disenfranchised, whatever word you want to use. I was just like, well...
It's a scorched earth experience.
Yeah.
You've been giving your heart a couple times to different places, and you're
yeah,
burned.
yeah.
Okay.
But my faith never wavered, ever. I just...
Isn't that interesting? Your faith never wavered.
No, it didn't. Yeah. It never made me question anything.
Yeah.
And when my friends at school would challenge me, because for some reason I enjoy making friends with people that are not Christians. Like, that's who I seek out and make friends with. And they would always challenge me.
As it should be, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Anyway.
You sit there with Christians and rub each other's backs.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, but they take up all your time all week. Go to this small group, do this volunteer experience, go to Sunday, and you're just like, how am I supposed to reach people if I'm always here?
Yeah.
So.
And those you reach, you know, they can't be too bad. You can't hang out too much.
Right, they have to be the right kind of non-believer.
That's right, yeah.
It's just a joke. Anyway, so my friends, you know, they were challenging me all the time. All the time. They would ask questions and make arguments, and it really just made me want to, I got really into apologetics as a teenager. As soon as we had internet service, I was just like, I am going to prove everything to everyone. Wow. So I got really into that. I was like, I listened to Dr. Walter Martin a lot, and William Lane Craig, and Frank Turek, and just all those guys.
Heavy hitters.
Yeah, all of them. I was obsessed with them.
Any Ravi?
No, I was never
Your
into...
spirit discerned. I'm just kidding. Totally joking here.
No.
Okay.
No, yeah, I never got into him. But anyway, so, you know, I was just obsessed with all of that. And I would listen to it all the time, and I would have these arguments with my friends. And, but then, I'm trying to think chronologically here.
While you're thinking of that, I want to tell the audience, because I know this about Sarah, when she says, I became obsessed with it, I was an apologist, I searched, This is not like a normal person saying, yeah, I got kind of interested. This is dog with a bone person. This is what is going to come into play when we talk about what she's doing with Check My Church, because she is relentless on discovering the facts. Relentless. The most relentless person I've ever met. So it's not like you can give her some answer to assuage her and get her to run along. That does not happen with this woman. And I can't emphasize that enough when it comes to what we're going to talk about. So keep going.
Well, you just made me think of what really came next for me was when I met Joe. So 18 years old, graduate high school. I ended up moving back in with my mom because I couldn't afford my rent because my roommate moved out. So I was still obsessed with apologetics. I would go to work, I'd come home, and I would just research and argue with people online. And that's when I met my husband, Joe, in the MySpace Religious and Philosophy Debate Forum.
Whoa, a match made in heaven.
Yeah, it wasn't a dating thing.
Yeah.
It was, I am going to destroy your arguments.
Wow.
And so we would chat in there. We had a whole group of people, regulars, that would come into this chat room and we would just all argue with each other. And there was a group that was really popular back then called the Rational Response Squad, and they were this atheist teen group, and they were like all into Richard Dawkins and those guys. And so they would come in and they would like torment me, and I would argue with them and they would gang up on me, and it was just like this constant battle with all these people. But Joe did something different. He was an agnostic, but he would make this argument that I wouldn't know how to argue against it. And then he would end it with a little smiley face.
Wow.
And I'd be like, well, he's a jerk, but he put a smiley face, so he's kind of funny too. And so I had this love-hate relationship with him before I even really knew him. I didn't even know his real name. I just knew his screen name. And so we argued for a while. And then one day he just private messages me on MSN or something. And he says, hi. And I was like, what are you doing? And he said, well, I just thought I'd say hi to you. And I said, well, you hate me, so why are you talking to me? He's like, I don't hate you. I said, yeah, you do. You're constantly arguing with me and telling me I'm an idiot and that I believe stupid things. He's like, I'm just joking.
Wow.
I'm just joking with you.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And so we just started like chatting. And then, we just kind of fell in love.
No, wait a minute. Chatting, you're talking about chatting.
Chatting.
That's not chatting like I know chatting.
Okay, well, eventually we talked on the phone. We started talking on the phone eventually.
It always leads to the phone.
It heated up. We got to the phone.
Where did he live? Because
here.
Wow.
He was born in Salt Lake and raised here. And when he told me his real name was Joe Young, I thought, Joseph Young? You're so Mormon. You're not an agnostic. I was like, Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, what are you doing? And he's like, no, seriously, that's my name. And so we chatted for a while, and then my ex-boyfriend started harassing me. He was like coming into my work and trying to like date me again. And so I told him about it, and he like scared this guy off. And I was like, oh, hey, thanks. And then eventually he asked me out. He asked me to come down here for an Eric Clapton concert.
Wow.
And I had no idea who that was. He opened me up to a whole new world of music.
Wow.
And I said, well, who's that? And he sent me a video of one of his songs. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. But my mom was like terrified. She's like, you're not going to meet some stranger that I've never met before that we don't even know is a man. Or a man your age. Like, we don't know if he's a serial killer.
Yeah.
She said, he's coming here first. I said, okay. And he said, okay. And he said, here's my, he like tried so hard. He's like, here's my social security card number. You want that?
Wow.
And he's like giving up all this information just so he can prove that he's not a psycho.
Wow.
And so he came down and he stayed for like a week, and we hung out, and then he went back, and then I went up and visited him a few months later, and we just kept doing that for like 6 months until we're broke. We can't keep flying.
Yeah.
We're both broke. And so we decided that one of us was going to move to the other place. And I said, well, I'll come down there because I really have nothing going on here. Mm-hmm. And so I moved here.
Wow. Salt Lake City?
Yeah.
Wow. And that year was?
2007.
Wow. So we were doing Heart of the Matter for a year. Not that you would have seen it then. You could have, but...
Not quite.
This is how I kind of figure it. So when did marriage come along?
It's kind of funny. We kind of just assumed, both of us, in our minds that we'd be together forever, and we didn't even talk about it for a while. And then one day I was like, hey, are you ever going to ask me to marry you or what? He was like, yeah, you want to get married?
Wow.
I'm like, yeah. So he says, okay, let's get married. Wow. And that was like a year after I moved down here.
Got it.
But, you know, we're horrible sinners living in sin.
So there was a recent program that you and I both watched, which we're going to talk about in part 2 as a cliffhanger. But in that, the local pastor, Jason Wallace, he described me as, when he started to introduce me, he said he was a sinful man. He was used alcohol. He used some drugs in his life as a Mormon. And so what do you say to someone who criticizes your present standing as a Christian? If hearing this about you, that you lived with Joe in sin prior to an official certificate, what would you say to them when they use that against your qualifications to speak?
It's totally irrelevant.
Yeah. It's totally irrelevant.
We all have made mistakes in life.
Yeah.
We all currently are living in sin.
Right.
Like, anyone that thinks that they're not is just delusional.
Right.
It's like,
Isn't
you
it
think
funny?
Sinful thoughts like 20 million times a day.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? And especially if it's against someone they disagree with. If someone's watching who doesn't like you, did you hear? She lived with her husband before they got a paper marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
When I checked my Real Life Ministries church, one of the ladies that read it and goes there emailed me and said, well, you're just a whore because I know that you were with your husband.
Oh my gosh.
So why should I take any advice from you?
Religious people are mind-blowing how they like to assess people who they don't agree with.
Right.
So continue on. You guys marry? Where did you marry?
We got married up in Coeur d'Alene. There's like a wedding chapel up there. I can't remember what it's called, but it was a cute little chapel. We got married and...
By an Elvis impersonator?
No. No, it's a real wedding chapel.
A real one. Women love that real wedding stuff, so okay. So it's real wedding.
So we got married and moved back down here, and pretty quick, the whole time I was like being all strategic, trying to witness to him without pressuring anything on him, because I knew that he had grown up in a very abusive environment with Christians.
Religiously abusive?
Yeah, religiously. He went to this Christian church and they were just horrible to him. Ask questions, you get punished. I mean, it's just like... And him and his sister used to actually skip Sunday school. Their mom would take them, like 5, 6 years old, put them in Sunday school, and they would leave.
Wow.
And she didn't even know. It was like skipping school for them.
Wow.
But anyway, so he was agnostic for good reason. He was very abused. And so that was most of the reason why he saw all this church playing as complete nonsense, but he connected it to God and the Bible and everything. And so I was like trying to show him, I was like, no, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and showing him just love. I was like, if I just love him, he'll come to know. Sorry.
It's okay, you don't be sorry.
But it's funny because I thought that's what brought him back to Christ, but as it turns out, he was telling me he was a Christian too, when he wasn't quite. Oh. These men, why do they do this? Anyway, so he, that's where I was. So I was trying to get him to go to a church with me. After we got married and we, started our own little family together, I was like, let's find a church.
Hold on.
Let's start going to church.
Don't keep your thought. I'm going to get the tissue.
Okay.
Because in the age of COVID, you're rubbing your eyes with that.
With my sweater?
You may have it. I'm just kidding. I'm not a COVID freak at all. I don't care.
I'm immune now because I had it.
Oh. Well, that's
Remember,
right.
I had it in October.
They say you're still not immune, but that's
whatever.
That's something they say.
They just say everything and expect us to believe it, whatever it is.
Isn't that the way it works in this life?
And I'm like, I don't believe any of it.
There you go.
Anyway,
this is where we are. You're trying it, and okay.
Yeah, I would play Walter Martin debates and he's a computer gamer, so he'd be on the computer gaming, and I'd be doing my own thing on my computer, and I'd be like, if I play this, it looks like I'm just listening to it, and he'll hear it. But I'm not forcing it on him. Right. He'll just hear it. So I did all this stuff, and I'm thinking I'm having an effect on him. And he's like, I love Walter Martin, but I don't believe a word he says.
Wow.
So I did that for a while, and then eventually I was like, okay, can I take you to church? Can we find a church? And he's just like, I don't know if I'm gonna be up for that. I said, just let me try. So I start doing research and looking for churches. And that's when I found Shawn McCraney on YouTube. And we started watching Heart of the Matter. And that was back in your glory days of,
I thought it was in my glory days now.
The glory days of shouting at people and getting woo from the audience. When you started your cult. Anyway, so we started watching that online on YouTube, and then we found out that you actually did it live, and so we started watching it on TV live. And then I was like, we're in Utah. We should go check it out. But I was socially just terrified of going anywhere and meeting people. For some reason, I became very socially anxious. So I was like, let's just go. We'll sit in the back. Nobody will even notice we're there. And that's exactly what happened. We're very sneaky. I don't think you even knew we were there.
Probably not.
No.
In those days, you just...
That's when you were at TV 20. And so we would sneak in, we'd sit in the back, we'd watch, and we'd book it. Book it to the car. And we did that for a little while. And then the whole, I'm going to start criticizing Christian churches, And I was like, yes! I was so excited for it. And then
you were one out of.
I was the one. I was the one, because we had been trying churches while we were watching Heart of the Matter. I tried taking. Maybe I won't mention these church names, but I tried taking him to several different churches in the area, and he always had the same reaction to every one. The pastor's up there like some kind of celebrity. He doesn't have time to answer questions. He can't talk to me. Like, what if I have a question about something? And it's just like everyone's a clone in those places. We went to one place where it was like a sea of plaid. Every person was wearing the same outfit. You go up to these greeters, okay, and they look terrified in the face, but happy at the same time. So they're like, I have to be really nice to you because you're new. Oh my God. And I just felt bad for him. But Joe was not having any of it. He's just like...
Kind of like your dad.
Yep. He's very critical, analytical like that, very objective. And so he would just say, no, I can't do this place. I'm sorry. And so when you announced that you were going to start doing church, I was like, holy crap, we gotta, come on, we gotta do it. So we went to when you were at the U of U. He was like, I can do this because there's no ridiculous show, and he's actually teaching the Bible. It's not some seminar, some self-help seminar that makes me feel good about all my feelings and my feelings. And so he really liked that. And so we just started going, and then you eventually moved around to getting here, and that's probably the first time I actually introduced myself to you, was when you were here.
She means the church studio.
Yeah.
We moved in here about 5 years ago.
Right. And so then we just started coming here regularly until we moved back up to Idaho for a while.
They do that stealth, by the way.
Yeah.
They tell you nothing, they just disappear.
We don't do anything. Yeah, I remember, because we moved and you called me up and you were like, hey, how's it going? Just making sure everything's good. I'm like, oh yeah, we moved to Idaho.
And I got to add one more thing about Joe. Joe, to this day, there's no playing games with Joe. Mm-mm. I mean, I straight up, Joe, what's up? He'll just go. I mean, he's so hardcore. There's no Shawn, the Christian hugging and, bowing and genuflect. None of that with Joe.
No, and he hates that. He hates it.
Yeah.
He hates walking into a building and getting any attention from anyone.
He's hardcore. I like it.
So the greeters.
He gives me nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of looks you up and down like, why are you speaking to me? So you moved to Idaho.
Yeah, we moved to Idaho. We were up there for just a couple of years. My mom needed help with, she had a medical billing business, so I was helping her with that. Then we had our first little baby, Jack, and we decided to move back down here because it wasn't working up there. And yeah, so we came back down here, and then we started coming back again. I mean, we were very irregular. Usually in cults, they make you come. Yeah. And
did you feel the pressure from us?
I mean, I was wondering if you knew I was alive.
We didn't follow you with our,
No. So we just kind of would pop in whenever we felt like it. And we did that for a while. And then I think we moved up to Idaho Falls again, stealth mode. And we visited my family up in Coeur d'Alene one Christmas. And we went to my younger sister's church. She had a church, she was going there, and it was kind of like a flashback to when I was taking my dad to Real Life Ministries. Like, she was treating it like, oh my gosh, you're gonna love this church. You're gonna love my church. And I was just in my head like, I'm probably not. So I love you, but I probably won't like it because we've been coming here for so long. Yeah. And I knew that there was just nowhere like this, really. There is, but it's very hard to find, very hard to find. So we went there, and the first thing the pastor says is, tithing, give us your money, give us your money. It's a commandment from God.
Oh.
You need to be obedient. We really appreciate your obedience. And I'm just sitting there shaking my head, and I'm like clenching onto my chair. And Becca's like, what? Huh? What's the problem? I don't understand. And so after that service, we're driving back down, me and Joe, and we're talking. And he's like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a website people could go to where they could look up a church and just know everything about that church? Like every piece of information that exists on that church is right there in one report. I said, yeah, that would be really cool, because then people could know what they're getting themselves into before they go and invest their time and money and lives. And so we talked about it for like 2 hours or something, and we came up with all these ideas. We were going to call it Church Crashers.
Oh.
And
like wedding crashers.
Yeah, like, because Joe's so aggressive. And I'm like, but I don't really want to crash anything. Yeah. But anyway, so we talked about it, and it was just sitting in the back of my head. We didn't really do anything about it. It was just sitting in the back of my head. So we come back, and I'm catching up on Heart of the Matter episodes because I wouldn't watch for a while, and then I'd catch up, and I'd watch like a bunch of them in a row. And then we watched the one where you said, someone needs to do this. Someone. He's like, you're like, this is $1 million idea, but none of you will do it. And at that moment, like, I was at home and I was like slapping the computer. I pointed at Joe. I said, I'm doing it.
Wow. Wow.
And that moment that I started like putting the website together and I started doing it. And so.
And what is it? Tell our audience what Check My Church is before you do it. How was our time?
That's an hour.
We're at an hour.
Exactly.
So here's the
hour.
cliffhanger. And just to remind you guys, one, this is how God works. He puts it in the person he's working with. And then someone else may come along and just mention something that the person has a two-witness verification. Doesn't always happen that way, but it could. And this is what happened with you were cut out for this. Your dad trained you for Check My Church.
And I never thought about it until after I started it.
So it's awesome. Joe wanted to call it Church Crashers, a system where they are going and researching churches, getting all the down low, and we're going to see how that has played out and what your response has been, who you've done, what you've learned when we come back next week here on Heart of the Matter.